This is our original footage. We're flying through Hong Kong. However, if you didn't know the area, you wouldn't know that you were flying through Hong Kong. How can we make it easy to know? Well, we could make this, the 3D fly-through text. And as you can see, it literally looks like it's just there, hanging in space. That's what's coming next, the fly-through 3D text effect. So there's a few things we need to do in a certain way to get this. Now we're taking this from Premiere Pro, because again, all of these things that I'm working on are working on the back of, you want them in Premiere Pro. A lot of people just work purely in After Effects. I don't. Anything that I work with in After Effects, I always start off in Premiere Pro, purely because I want options when I get to the end without having to then import from After Effects. Even though the vast majority of this is going to be done in After Effects, we still start off in Premiere Pro. We just have to, because then we can do stuff with it. So here's our footage right here. As you can see, as you saw just now, this is our footage. So just like before, we right click the actual clip and we're going to create a new sequence from the clip. That's the first thing we need to do. You don't drag it into a new sequence that you've created. Let's just make sure everything is exactly the same. Then we just duplicate like we've done before, right click and replace with After Effects composition. And as you can see, we are here now with our footage in. Now we need to do a couple of things first. So first off, we're going to pre-compose this just to make sure that everything stays inside. Have it move all attributes in there. Adjust composition duration for the time span of the selected layers. That doesn't matter. Let's just press OK. Just make sure it doesn't open the new composition. So now we're outside, we're brown, and we now literally just come to tracker. If it's not open, click it there. If it's not in this list here, just come to window and select tracker. And then all we do is we select track camera. And that now just starts working through everything. It can take a bit of time. Depending on the quality of the footage and the speed of your system, it's probably a good time to just go and get a coffee right now and come back when it has completed. It can take a while. And finally, after a good while, maybe a bath, maybe a shower, maybe a run round your local city, and we're finally at this point where it starts to solve the camera. And you start to cross your fingers and you think, oh, did I remember to pre-comp? Is it definitely the right settings? And then you get that. If you don't, you get this. And that's when you realize that you didn't pre-compose. Learn the lesson that I have learned many times before. And so what you can see when you first solve the camera are all these little tracking dots. Now, if you can't quite see them, they are quite small. You can size them up over here. You could click in here or drag and just maybe 200, maybe yeah, you can see how we can see them bigger. And now what we want to do is we want to solve the camera. But what we want is we want the text somewhere around the middle here coming through. So what I would suggest is maybe finding somewhere here or the ground. But first, let's scrub through and maybe keep an eye on the ground and see how they track through. And they seem to be tracking through quite well. It does kind of slow down a little bit. So we need to kind of, yeah, maybe drop down to maybe a third quality. That'd be better. Yeah, as you can see, this is quite an intensive piece of tracking, especially if you've got really large footage like what this is. But I'm thinking these look all right, actually. I'm going to try here. So what we do is just literally with our selection tool, we've got our selection tool selected, and we kind of want to draw we want to trace a line around a few points. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at that and I'm looking at that little target thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start dragging. As you can see, these start to create things. Yeah, I want those 3 points. Let go. And it's created this. If I zoom in a little bit and maybe move down, you can see we've now got these 3 selected, and it creates a target in the middle. It's not quite level with this, but I think we'll be able to work with that. So anywhere in here, you right click and you create text and camera for this effect. So boom, we're done. And as you can see, we have something down here. If we step it now up to full, you can see that it reads text. Okay. So what has happened here? Well, first we've created this text, and now we have these crazy little things once we click on it. And that's because it's been made into 3D. This right here is the 3D toggle. I'm going to leave that on there, and we're now going to start to play around with this to get it how we want it. So you see these little circles as you mouse over, these little balls. This will affect the Y axis. So Control and Z that. This will affect the X axis. So this will stand it up. So we kind of want that first. This is just a rotation, bear in mind. And this one, we want to find the Z axis. We don't want that. Don't want that to rotate. Let's just Control and Z that. And now we use the Y axis to bring it round, and that looks okay. So now let's move it a little bit, and that looks to be tracking okay. Yeah, okay. I'm happy with that so far. Just yeah. What we can do to make this a little bit faster now we're playing back is, because we're in Cinema 4D, we could say draft 3D. And what that will do is, if I come out, there's actually a wireframe that will now be around everywhere, that sometimes you see, sometimes you don't, depending if it's struggling. Let's just go back to fit and play that through and see how that's tracking. Looking at this down here, and yeah, I'm okay with that. We seem to be doing all right. So let's get back to the beginning. And let's grab this again. And now let's start kind of putting it into position. So rather than grabbing the circles, so the balls that are halfway along these, we're now going to start grabbing the arrows. And with the Y, we want to move it up. Okay, so we've now moved it right up to where we want it. And don't forget, this is a text layer. So if we go into paragraph and we go onto our T, so our type tool, if we click into here, we can now type in here. So I'm going to select it all. And this is actually a street in Hong Kong. So I'm going to type H-O-N-G. And I'm going to put another line and K-O-N-G, Hong Kong. Good. So now we've got that. Let's, sorry, not paragraph. We're going to go to character. And we want to size this up. But first we want to select a piece of text. So I'm going to go with Nor'Wester. Don't judge me, but it's just purely because it's a nice chunky piece of text, and that's kind of what we want for this effect. So I'm going to size this up now. Good. There's a bit too much space in between them, so I'm going to drop this down. This is the space, the line spacing. I'm just going to select a number, which would be far too low, and then I'm going to drag it out just to be about, yeah, okay. I'm happy with that. Good. So if we play that through now, that seems to be coming right the way through our effect. I love this. I do, honestly, I just love this effect. I do want it actually centered though. I don't know if it looks centered. Now, going to paragraph and saying centered, it might totally ruin up our alignment, but that's fine. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I maybe prefer it there. As you can see, it's not quite straight to our view, so I'm going to just drag it a little bit. Yeah, just go on back there, and yeah, and if we pull it all the way through, come all the way through here, yeah, okay. Now what I want to do is I want to get it a little bit closer, so then we can fly through it. So if we highlight it, and if we think about what axis we want to go on, we kind of want the Z axis, do we? Yeah. So this is moving it out in space. This is moving it closer to us. So I'm just going to put it maybe about there, and then I'm going to bring it across on the X axis. I'm now going to rotate it slightly on the Y, so it just looks a little bit more believable. He says, big text, right? Something. And don't worry, we will make this look better. I'm just going to check as we fly through. Do we? Oh, all right. As you can see, what I want to do, I want to go through one of the O's. So I'm just going to, I've just selected it here, and it's handily brought this out to the side for me so I can keep my view, but bring it down while I'm looking. And if I now go through this, yeah, we'll fly through there. Good. Let's come back, see how that looks when we come back. I'm still quite happy with the position. Good. So we've started it. Now we can play around with it. I think I might want to change the color, but let's just see. Now, don't forget, we put on Cinema 4D, and the reason for that is if we drop down here on the text, we now have our geometry positions because we're in 3D, geometry options even. So we're going to go down to geometry options, and we're going to start playing with this first. We're going to extrude a little. So if you start dragging this up, if you see, look at the text while I do that. It's now making it a bit deeper. You can't really tell yet for a reason that I will tell you in a moment. It's to do with lighting. Don't let that blow your mind. But yeah, we'll come back to that. So we've got our extrusion depth there. We can also play with our bevel style, but not just yet. Let's just drop down our material options, and we want to make sure that accept shadows is on, accepts lights is on. If it's not, just click it. And then just, you know, you don't drag or anything. You just click it to say yes or no. It appears in reflections. Fine. We're not going to be working that with this. We just want to cast shadows, accept shadows, and accepts lights. Okay. So now, do you remember when we created a null? Yeah. Well, we're now going to create a light because we're working in 3D space. And obviously, the whole scene is lit because that's a piece of footage, but we also want to create some light on here. Now, what I've been trying to work out while I've been looking at this is which way the light is coming. And if I look down here, I'm looking down now onto the street, and I can see that the shadows are pretty much directly underneath, but they're a little bit offset to the left. Can I find anything else that would confirm that? Maybe the cars? Well, the shadow's a little bit behind. We might have to use a little bit of poetic license here, but you always want to kind of look for where the shadows are. What about from these people? If I just hide that text for now, see that they're still, that's from behind them, that's behind. So it kind of looks like the light is kind of coming from in front of us, but we're going to cheat it a little bit. So let's just turn that text back on. And what we're going to do is we're going to create two lights. First, we're going to create an ambient, and then we're going to create a spot. Why can't we just create a spot? Well, I'll show you once we've created the ambient and the spot, and I'll turn it off and I'll show you. But first, let's just create anywhere in here, new, and we're going to go for a light. And we're going to make sure that it's just an ambient light. And the intensity, I'm going to put it at 80%. I'm going to leave it at white, so that's just a white light. And we're going to hit OK. So you can see how this just went a little bit darker. If we haven't got a light on, it will just be lit, or it will just appear. If we now start to affect with lighting, it affects the actual 3D objects in there. And the reason why it's not 100% white is because we put on an ambient at 80%. So obviously if this was 100%, it would be fully white, but we don't want it at 100% because we want to also be able to create some shadows within this. This will all become clear when we create the next light, which is a spotlight. So again, empty space, right click, down to light, and then we're going to drop down and create a spotlight. I'm going to leave that again at 80%, leave everything here, whatever yours is, just leave it at it, and then we can play around with it. Again, with the fall off, great. I'm going to make sure it casts shadows as well. And the shadows darkness, again, we can come into this. But right now, I'm going to have it at 100%. I'm just going to put a little bit diffusion. Remember when we do drop shadows and we blur it? That's very similar. It's the similar thing. So let's press OK. And now we have a spotlight. Nothing has changed. And that's because we don't know where the spotlight is pointing. So this is the spotlight. The ambient light doesn't really show up because it's just ambient. But if we start moving around this spotlight, it's not doing anything, is it? So let's start moving it back, and let's find where it needs to be able to affect this. Now we're moving it back, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything. So again, let's start playing around. The layer is auto. Yeah, okay. Don't worry. You see? Now there's the cone. Can you see it now? We're starting to rotate. This is giving us our light. So if we start to play around, that is, yeah, it's kind of okay. We now need to start playing with it a little bit more. See how this is front and back. And then if we use the, it's a lot of guesswork, but the X, there we go. That's going a little bit higher. You can feel like you're kind of everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But if you zoom out a little bit, it can help. You see how this is now. Yeah, we're now getting somewhere. And don't forget, you can animate the lights as well. We're not going to do that in this. Don't worry, I'm not going to add too much. But we're going to place that there. And if we start to move forward, you see that the light moves everything with us. And yeah, okay. I'm happy with that so far. Let's go back to fit. Actually, I'm just going to move it back just a little bit. The reason why we brought in this light is because we want to create some kind of shadows within the 3D. If we twirl this back down with the text, and remember we added an extrusion depth. If we now start to play with that, you can see how long we can make it. So I'm just going to bring it back just a little bit, not too much, about there. And what I also want to do is I want to affect the bevel. So we can select what bevel style we want. We can either have angular, concave, or convex. Let's try angular and see how that looks. See how that kind of adds to it? Let's just zoom into a little bit there. Don't forget we're on Draft 3D. If we take off Draft 3D, it will render a lot better, but we're using Draft right now just to make it a little bit easy for us. We could actually drop down to quarter as well. See how it goes? It doesn't render like that. It just, it just helps. It just really helps. And I'm just going to drag this up a little bit, and that's a little bit too much. We can then work with our extrusion depth to kind of make it maybe a little bit more like we want. Let's just go for concave. No, we don't want concave. Maybe convex. We don't want it that rounded. Take it back to 2. Yeah, okay, that looks okay. That looks all right. I actually quite like that. Hong Kong. And don't forget, we can always change the text if we want to. This H and this K are now really close together. So I'm going to change this up a little bit, drag the line spacing just to kind of offset them a little bit. Good, happy with that. Let's close that up. And now let's play that through and see how it looks. As we're flying through, it might start a little bit too close. I might want to, if we take it through a little bit, we're already like through it here. I want to maybe, let's grab this, zoom out a little bit. Can I get it back? Come on, give me the control. Do I have to get here? Yeah, okay. Just going to grab the Z and just push it back a little bit. So as we're coming through here, maybe move it over a little bit. We can actually at this point get our title and action safe to make sure that we're exactly right. As we're coming through here, oh, went off a little bit, didn't it? Give me that handle again. Let's move back. There we go, want that. And as we're coming around here, is that where we want to be? Is it? Yeah, okay, does it? We're not just going right through the middle of it, are we? Where, you see, I just don't want that so much. We can go down to our positions, and let me just go back here. As well as affecting these, we can play with these as well, which will affect the height, and this one affects the Z. The other one was the X, and this is the Y. So we can continue through here. Now that we've got our position up, we can come here. That I don't want full white, you see. I want it to go through the whole of the O. So let's just use page down now. Keep coming, keep coming. A few more frames. Yeah, it just needs to be aligned just a little bit to the side there. I'm not even doing the right one. It's this one. There we go. As we go here. Yeah, we fly through it. Good. Happy with that. And now that we've moved that back, the spotlight isn't quite on it. So I'm just going to grab this a little bit and move it round rotate it down slightly. There we go. Fully lit. So we've almost got, here's the hot spot and it goes through to a little bit of a gradient through there. And don't forget, we can change the color. We just select the text and come up here. Say we like that orange. We could grab our picking tool and select that. Click there. That's now given us our orange. And yeah, that looks quite cool, that, doesn't it? You could add another light as well, coming from another direction, another color. Let's go for, do you know what? Let's go for the kind of the cool, trippy cinematic color. So if we go for this purple on there for the light, yeah, for the text, does help if you've got the text selected. Did that on purpose? No, I didn't. For that purple there, cool. And then if we add another light, spotlight, give us a, light, and we want a spot and we want the blue, like the really like, kind of like that kind of blue, and grab that. And now we just have another light to position. But if we bring it to the side, rotate it round. So here we are now, we're getting this, we want that kind of just affecting that. I just want to change that color. Maybe we need to give it like a bit of a darker color to get this effect. And let's bring this intensity. Where's my light intensity? There we go, to 100. And you see how now that's kind of blended that in. So let's move it. Okay, that's not the way we want to move it. We want to move it maybe there. Let's bring it up on the Z. If we rotate this round the other way. Okay, so we're lighting that way now. So if we bring this down a little bit, and then rotate it up. See how that's filling in there now? Kind of maybe not what we want. If we bring that down now. Yeah, so you see this little glare that we've got along the edges here. If I turn it off, it's just giving that little bit more of a pop. I'm not too sure I like that color. No, doesn't really do it for me. Let's maybe pick that orange actually. Let me, oops, have the actual text highlighted or selected even. Get that orange. No, it's definitely not that orange I want. I want maybe a little bit more. That's yellow. Like that. Hong Kong. And maybe actually I don't want that bevel. See how you've got so many options here once you start playing. And I want an angular bevel. Boom, like that. And the extrude depth, I'm just going to bring that down to maybe 10, just to close it up a little bit. And then as we close that up, let's just hit 0 on the keyboard. That all looks good. And it starts to stutter a little bit. Just going to Control S there. Going to hit Draft 3D, turn that off. And don't forget, we can go to Composition Settings, go to 3D Renderer. It's still Cinema 4D. Press Options, and bring it up to kind of wherever you want. Let's go Extreme Quality for highly reflected layered. No, we don't have any reflections. That's cool. We'll just put it on to typical then. Okay. Press OK and press OK. Control S that. Just going to save out that project. Then we're going to come back to Premiere Pro. And there's our clip. Going to press O there, I there, and render that out. And now that we're fully rendered, it didn't actually take too long. Just a reminder, this was the original footage. Looks great anyway. However, come back here, and now, I mean, look how well that's tracked. And remember, we were tracking off this bottom bridge going across here, whatever that is, a gantry, and it just works perfectly. And it could just be there in real life. And the beauty of this, now that we're back in Premiere Pro, is that here's one I made earlier. I sped that up to, did I sped up to 400? Yeah, about 400%. Play that through, and we have it. Let me just give you a cheeky example of what's coming next. And just for the little bit of wizardry that we like to call speed ramping, we've now got this. Just as we come through, we come back to real time. Looks cool, huh? So that is your fly-through 3D text. And although the system takes a while to actually create this effect, doesn't really take that long at all. And as you can see, it's really quite effective. Next up, speed ramping.